Aladdin, with my most recent, brought me here to Michigan, where I worked at Greektown Casino downtown, and just love the human resources aspect of the industry, helping businesses, get the best out of their employees. And a couple years ago, started Your People Solutions with Denise, where we focus on helping small businesses who don't have that internal HR support, and have really enjoyed that aspect of our next stage in our careers.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and welcome, Michelle. Thank you for taking time out of all the things you could be doing this evening. I appreciate you spending time with us. Denise, if you could tell us a little bit of background for you as well, I appreciate that.
Sure. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. I've been in human resources in one capacity or another for between 30 and 35 years. I've been in a multiple of industries. I've worked in gaming, healthcare, telecommunications, high tech, and Michelle and I think we've worked together. How long, Michelle? 10 years?
About 10 years. Yeah, we met in 2010.
About 10 years. Yeah.
Yep.
Mostly in the gaming industry, although we've been doing this now for a couple of years. My background has largely been in startups, acquisitions, mergers. So I've worked a lot with smaller businesses and rapidly growing firms who experience all the aches and pains of wearing 5 hats at the same time and with a smile on your face. Right. So we really appreciate being here to talk to everyone tonight.
And I like how you emphasized with a smile on your face.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, as I mentioned, that we have gotten questions from the audience beforehand about working with remote teams, especially remote healthcare teams. And it's becoming more and more difficult finding and keeping the right employees in healthcare. For that matter, medical practices are still trying to understand the CARES Act, and they're trying to figure out how they're supposed to update their employee manual. But because since both of you have experience in healthcare, especially remote healthcare teams, I just wanted to lay a foundation of our discussion tonight, because as more healthcare organizations adopt a work from home policy, I know that hospital leaders, practitioners, healthcare office owners, wellness center owners really need to learn how to manage remote employees. And although there are challenges to managing a virtual workforce, many practitioners and hospitals that have had success with it find that their employees are either on one end highly motivated and on the other end experiencing compassion fatigue. So that's why I wanted to bring you both on the line here so that we can talk a little bit more about this. And as more individuals ask to telecommute and maybe have flexible hours, healthcare organizations that allow staff to work remotely will find that it can also help with recruitment and might improve the satisfaction of long-term employees. So although healthcare industry traditionally had employees work within the 4 walls of the hospital or the medical practice, remote workforces are becoming more and more common, especially as organizations merge and open into multiple sites, or as healthcare organizations or practices go from a clinical model into a hybrid model and into ultimately a virtual practice. And so it becomes necessary for us to have these discussions with our teams, and especially for managers, because in order for managers to effectively oversee a remote team, they need to start with their staff and look at their team and decide, okay, who are the self-starters, who are self-directed, who has the discipline to ignore distractions at a home office. Then healthcare leaders need to learn to nurture these relationships. But before we even get into how we nurture those relationships, why don't we start with talking, and I'll ask this question for either you, Michelle, or you, Denise. How do we help ensure our employees don't burn out with remote work?
Yeah, thank you again, Kim. I'll take that one to start us off. It can sound like a really great thing to be able to work from home, especially from an employee's perspective, like you talked about. Less commute time, saves on the gas, some flexibility. You can do maybe some home things while, in the midst of your day. And so it sounds like a great thing, but it can also create some unexpected challenges because, the work and the home environment are the same. And
Right.
it can be, become difficult to separate the two. And so we do have some ideas and things to share with the group that may help employees bridge that or separate those things out. One is to really block that time on the calendar that's work time versus home time. Even so far as to block out break time, and it may seem kind of silly to say, okay, I have to block time on my calendar to stand up and walk around, but in the beginning, especially to get to that routine, that can be very helpful. Whenever possible, also separate the rooms to where you have a separate office from your living area. I know that can be tough for some people's living situations, but that's definitely the first step. If you can't do that, at least put the work away if you have to work at a kitchen table or in the living room. But if you can put that computer and put those papers aside while you're on your home time, that can at least also help separate the two environments.
Mm-hmm.
And then key is to turn off those audible alerts on your computer, because
Oh my gosh.
if you're always hearing as a ding, as new emails or new information is coming in, that can get very distracting and pull you back into work throughout the evening. So that's I maybe should have put that one first, because that's critical. Turn off those audible alerts.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
That's important. That's important.
Absolutely. I think you're right, Michelle. Putting those boundaries, making sure you have definitive boundaries. So this is work time and then this is not. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And, I want to also point out for some of the attendees who may not have been part of day one's masterclass, but I want to point out that on day one of our masterclass, Dr. Marcy and I talked about the importance of self-care, the importance of disconnecting from electronics, the importance of even turning off artificial light at a certain time, so that we can balance the demands of running a virtual practice. And Dr. Marcy gave some great tips on that. So if anyone missed day one of the masterclass, I'm going to ask that you find that in the Thriving Practice Sisterhood private Facebook group, because we have all of Dr. Marcy's great information and how she tied in that the importance of self-care and making self-care a priority so that you can show up to these appointments refreshed and well taken care of. But now on day two, we discussed having a clear vision of your practice from licensed grief counselor Janelle Chase from Barbados. So that you can pivot to a hybrid or a virtual practice based on your vision. But what we've also learned is that my clients have noticed an increase in not only patient cancellations that are tied to a virtual practice, but we've also we've also noticed a provider cancellation with telehealth and virtual practices. That's why in day three, I wanted to talk a little bit more about what happens when a provider cancels, especially when you're working with a multi-practice discipline where there's multiple providers there. So just like Michelle had pointed out about, setting some clear boundaries with your time, you also have to set some clear time boundaries with your patients so that they have a patient experience. Make sure your patients know when they can and when they cannot schedule time on their telehealth or their virtual health appointments with you. I also think that patients need to know that bumps are a possibility. Bumps, or another way of putting it, provider cancellations. They're just a possibility. Tell patients that when they book their appointment, that there will always be a possibility that the provider may cancel on them. And I also ask, if whenever possible, don't schedule patients out more than 3 months. Be really clear that there's a probability for a cancellation, especially in what we're experiencing with the pandemic. And then keep in mind, like Michelle's pointing out, it takes a village. It takes a village in a patient's care. So we should treat this as a team effort when it comes to scheduling, and setting time up, or setting our schedules up for telehealth. And if you don't mind, Michelle, I also want to point out that there really, after reviewing thousands of provider cancellations, there really has been a trend in both patient and provider cancellation dates. Michelle, would you mind if I just share that for a moment?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the top 5 most provider and patient cancellations, the top 5 are Monday and Thursday at 9 a.m. And this is, like I said, after reviewing thousands of cancellations. When you're talking about scheduling your day, the top 5 most canceled appointments by the patient or the provider, Monday or Thursday at 9 a.m. The next one that we've noticed is definitely Friday at 9 a.m. or Monday at 10 a.m. and then finally Wednesday at 9 a.m. So be wary of morning appointments. They have the highest rate of patient and provider cancellation. And so I want to also point out seasonality. One of the main reasons for providers canceling in a practice is that the data reflects that December, November, October, and July are the most frequently provider cancellation months out of the calendar year. And of course, those months also are dominated by vacations and weather challenges too. But just keep that in mind when you're building out your schedule in your virtual practice. Keep in mind those morning appointments and December, November, October, and July as well. So I want to ask another question here. What are some key considerations for managing a remote workforce?
That's a great question, Kim. And as we move further along with the pivot to remote work, more and more things become clear. I think remote working is here to stay. There's no doubt about it. It's employers are finding out that that's really a strong recruiting tool for them. It opens up a whole new labor force for them that they sometimes can't get to because there's a little bit more flexibility with work and family, right?
Right.
The pandemic, right. The pandemic has changed the family care situation for a lot of different people, just because jobs are different now. Job opportunities are different now. But with remote work specifically, I think it's really important to set immediate and clear expectations, be very specific and then measurable. Anytime you can get measurable, that's very helpful, because that allows you to establish where the four corners of their world are. You know it and they know it, and then that builds the communication between you and your staff. They understand clearly what you're looking for from them. You want to document those expectations as much as possible, because again, as you document them and review them with the staff member and even have them sign off on it prompts additional communication, more conversation. It just helps build the relationship between you and your staff person. And anytime you can build that communication, then you build that sense of team and communal feeling. I think it's really important. I've seen this in a couple of different clients that I've worked with, to engage with your staff as much as you can. Obviously, the work days are busy. You've got a lot of things coming. Sometimes the schedule isn't always exactly the way you plan it. But to engage with them, your staff, if you can daily, just reach out and touch them so they know you're there and they know you know they're there. And it allows them for quick questions. And remember, in this kind of a situation, you don't have those kind of hallway conversations. You don't have the how was your weekend? You don't have the how's your dog? Whatever's important to you. And all those little things just help, all those little side conversations help build that feeling of family and connectivity and connecting with each other, right?
Right.
So I think as much as you can, reach out to them. Schedule regular team meetings if you can. I mean, that gives people a little bit of a structure in somewhat of an unstructured situation. Technology has really, really been a friend to the remote working situation. There's a bunch of new intercommunication devices like Slack, where you can just quickly send that. You can't have the quick hallway conversation, but I can quick send you a Slack on something that's happening that's meaningful, either to what's happening to me or something I think you can use in your own situation. And that's really helpful. I think one of the challenges for remote workforce is staying engaged as a team.
Yes.
Right. And maintaining the culture of the community, right? Because you build that as a group, and that's something that you lean on that. So when you're having a tough day, you lean on your team or you lean on your group. And that's difficult in a remote workforce. It's not always available, and they don't, even though you're doing the same types of things, you lose that relativity to what I'm doing versus what you're doing. I can't see you or know you, what you're doing. And I think that's it's difficult to overcome. So some people, what a couple of my clients do, they have happy hours. They have virtual happy hours. Sometimes they bring their pets. Sometimes they dress as their pets. You know, it's just anything goofy to have that personal one-on-one time you're with your work group, but you're separate from work. Sometimes they do a scavenger hunt with cool things you can find in your house. So I've had some of the leaders in my client group, they've made videos, rah-rah videos or inspirational videos, or here's what's something new but just seeing the person who is the leader of your group, even if it's on a screen, it just kind of makes the remoteness go away a little bit.
Oh, I love some of those examples you just shared. And it reminds me of a women's health practice that my team and I work with, where we, as part of our coaching program, we had to spend time working with the entire remote staff for their virtual practice and orientating them towards the practice's culture, because telecommuters, virtual healthcare team members, they often feel just completely disconnected from the rest of the healthcare team. So it's really up to the managers, the practitioners to help their entire remote telehealth team or remote healthcare team to stay engaged and really to stay motivated. I would say one of the best ways to do that, especially for new employees, is to make sure they spend time in the office on occasion before they leave into their virtual worlds, so they can get a sense of what the office culture, the healthcare culture is like there. Because like you had pointed out, Denise, there's just nothing that can make up for the personal connection and in-person visit. So as managers, as healthcare leaders, we have to spend time with our team and invest in them and make sure they understand what our culture is supposed to look like, feel like, sound like, so that when we're working remotely, we all sound like one unified voice.
Absolutely.
So another question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, and I apologize. I don't know if you can see on video. Speaking of technology, I might be having some technology issues today, but I am still here. And, it's just creating those organic water cooler, to your point, moments, but virtually. can really be a great way to keep your team engaged and make sure that they are feeling part of a bigger team.
Yeah. Yeah. How should employers address conflicts, especially with employees that are working remotely? I mean, I think we know how to address it when everyone is in the same clinic, the same office, the same hospital, but how do you handle that when employees are working remotely, especially in healthcare, and maybe even when they're dealing with compassion fatigue? How do you handle that?
Mm.
Well, dealing with conflict is always tricky because nobody likes to do it. But I think the thing that you don't want to do is ignore it and hope it will go away, because it won't. If you don't address it, it becomes ingrained, and then it starts to really, really affect the foundation of the culture and the community that you're trying to build, right?
Right.
So I think once it's identified, you want to get to the bottom of it, get to the root of it, get it out on the table and discuss it, and be as proactively as you can. What I encourage folks to do, if you're in an in-office setting, you get two people in a room, you have a conversation, you get it out on the table, and you settle it. And I think that's probably the best thing to do in a remote situation as well. I mean, you set an agenda, you discuss the problem, everybody has their say, you decide what you're going to do that's positive and it will help build back a sense of team again, and then you move on.
Right. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. How, and either one of you can answer this, that's fine, but how do employers handle an employee who just cannot seem to stay focused or even
Mm-hmm.
motivated when working remotely? How do you handle that?
Yeah, and kind of how I talked about earlier, it can be, great to be at home and limiting your commute time or things like that, but it's easy to get distracted. Either other family members are around, or those, chores may be calling your name, and so it can be really easy to get distracted. One thing to do if you're interviewing a new team member that's going to be remote is to incorporate that into your interview questions to see, if they're going to be able to handle more of that independence that they may have working from home.
Mm-hmm.
Phrase your questions, similar, tell me about a time where you had, multiple projects on your plate and, either at home or at work, and how did you prioritize them? How did you, get them all done, and in what order? Or tell me about a time where you didn't have anything to do at work, and what you did with that. How were you a self-starter? Did you find things to do, or did you just sit back and wait for somebody to bring something to your plate? So identifying some of those characteristics during the interview process can be helpful to make sure you're going to get a self-starter. But talking what Denise kind of mentioned earlier, you want to make sure there's a clear understanding with what those expectations are going to be working from home. Are there check-in times? Are there project deadlines? So really being clear and upfront about those expectations for the job. Speaking of technology, are there productivity tools that you can utilize that really tracks your employees' work time? So you may want to look at some of those technology opportunities, and it really comes down to just that communication, over communicating maybe a little bit, especially in the beginning, of what those expectations may be.
Yeah. I
and
think.
Then
Go ahead, Michelle. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. And and then if they are struggling with that focus and meeting deadlines and those types of things, it really is going to come down to that coaching and holding them accountable to those expectations.
Right. And I like how you pointed in, both you and Denise pointed out the check-in times. That's, make sure that's part of your culture. Just those check-in to check up on them. Are they taking good care of themselves? Have they started to practice good self-care? Do they understand the vision of the practice, that it was, that it has pivoted to a hybrid or a virtual practice? Do they understand that? And I've also found that
Mhm.
that when we have those check-in times with our teams, at least when I'm coaching healthcare practitioners, I also mention to them, don't always discuss business. Try to make a personal connection.
Mhm.
Whenever you talk to,
Absolutely.
yeah, whenever you're talking to your team by, um, um, Skype, instant messenger, phone, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever that might be. Don't just talk about work. Just as you talk with your staff in the office by, like Denise said, the coffee machine or the water cooler, try to talk to them about their weekends and the thing that's going on in their lives. Really make sure that you're looking at them and their work life their work life balance from a mental, an emotional, a physical foundation, and self care. Having really good self care techniques for your remote staff to use will help them balance all of that. One of our
Mhm.
clients owns both a chiropractic office as well as a wellness center. And when it comes down to not always discussing business, we have taught our healthcare practitioners that it's also fun to use gamification in your leadership skills. Just like you had pointed out, maybe dressing up like your dog, or find something fun in your house. What we ended up
Yeah.
doing with this particular client who has both of those practices, 2 weeks ago, I asked her to ship a pair of Detroit Tiger baseball themed gifts to all her remote workers. And in order to really gamify it, she put a Detroit Tiger baseball sticker on top of the box, and it said, "Don't open until April the 1st," because that's our opening
Oh,
day for
awesome.
Detroit. Yeah. So
Mhm.
she gamified it. She don't open until April the 1st, which is like it was a chilly opening day here in Metro Detroit. But once her remote staff opened the box, they all received a pair of Detroit Tiger socks, which it's very chilly here. They were much, much needed, and a healthy snack, as well as a letter encouraging them to take care of their emotional, mental, and physical health. And so that is how we coach
Mm.
practitioners to build a successful virtual practice team. Gamify it, make it fun,
Mhm.
enjoy it. And again, for anyone who's on this call who has not been on the other masterclass series, I just would like to offer you to schedule a strategy session with me, and we can discuss your virtual practice goals. And I would be happy to tell you about more games and ways that you can engage your staff in a fun and a playful way. So let's talk about another question that's hot, which is, as you're pivoting your practice into a virtual practice format, can I hire employees from multiple states? So which one of you would like to answer
Yeah.
that one?
I'll start with that one, and then Denise can pick up if there's other thoughts that she has. But I guess the short answer is yes, you can hire from other states, but there's definitely a lot of considerations that you're going to want to consider with that. One, if you just go back to the interpersonal relationships that you were talking about, Kim and Denise, and it could limit some of the ad hoc get-togethers. You may not be working in the same office for a work environment, but if you're wanting to plan some of those get-togethers outside of the office, it could limit that. That person's going to feel even more remote from the team. Then you also want to just consider various state laws that may come into play versus tax implications. Certain states, such as California, may even require you to compensate your employees for working from home for some of the additional electricity and office supplies and things that
Right.
they may have. So there are some states that do require that. California is probably the biggest one of that. And there just may be some other individual laws that you just need to consider with that. But short answer is yes, you can do that, but it's definitely something you would want to weigh all of the pros and cons before taking that leap of hiring somebody outside of the state that you're currently doing business.
There's also some states that have reciprocal, because Michelle is right, it's the state laws and the taxation, what have you, that you have to watch out for. But some states have reciprocal agreements. For instance, Michigan has a reciprocal agreement with Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin, and that makes a difference. So that makes it permissible. You avoid taxes in 2 states. So that's good to keep in mind.
Okay.
Time zones can be
And also
different as
time
well.
zones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the time zones.
Great minds,
so we were
Michelle.
both thinking on that one. Yeah, exactly. You know, so if you're in Michigan or in the Eastern time zone and you happen to hire somebody from a mountain or you know, Pacific 3-hour time difference, that can be some challenges with you know, schedules and being able to at least converse with the rest of the team.
You know, and thank you for bringing that up because again, we don't talk about it enough, but I have been asked more and more about, you know, provider cancellations. And that's another reason. It's a time zone gap too that they're dealing with. So thank you for bringing that up. Like I said, we do talk about patient cancellations, but we also need to take into consideration how many provider cancellations that are starting to occur now because of a virtual practice or a telehealth environment. And how do we, you know, how do we shift staff around? Because like you're experiencing, Michelle, when the provider's technology or their Wi-Fi goes down, now the virtual workforce needs to shift those patients into different days, different times, time zone considerations, you name it. All of that has to be taken into consideration. And it can be done as long as you have, like I said, a vision for how this should work and you have great communication with your team, but you're also taking into consideration those legal aspects. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, and even, you know, going to the technology a little bit, you know, so I've been working from home for 2 or 3 years pre-COVID and didn't really have as many challenges with the bandwidth and the technology. But as more and more people are starting to work from home, you have more people on that the internet and the wavelengths or whatever those technology terms are. And so it can be a challenge that just has to be added, you know, taken into consideration. And talk about a cost, it could be an added expense to those employees for getting additional bandwidth or things like that. So it's just things you have to consider.
Right.
And I think if you're in multiple time zones, and if you're the lead or if you're the provider, you have to make sure you stop working, because it just opens up a broader day for you, right? So you need to take care of yourself and make sure you stop working too.
Well, yeah, right. Right. Exactly. You know, and when we do virtual, there's no easy way around it. Virtual practices require a lot of technology training. They really do. You know, we are a partner with Notes, where we've worked with practitioners installing eClinical, EHR, EMR systems, and there's a lot of juggling, a lot of scheduling that goes on, and bandwidth requirements and technology learning curves that all of this has to, you know, you have to take into consideration in addition to, you know, where is this healthcare practitioner located? What state are they in? So lots of things that we can cover with a strategy call with me and my team. But let me ask the next question. What are some of the issues to look for when onboarding a remote team member?
Absolutely. Oh, the biggest thing I think you have to remember is that their experience is going to be significantly different than someone who's onboarded on site, right?
Right.
It's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to impart that sense, again, of culture, team, the community. I think it's really important that you make sure that that the remote worker feels included and welcomed and part of the group as soon as you can. And maybe you have a virtual team meeting just to introduce the new worker to the group, right? And I like what you said, Kim, about having them come on site. I think it's important to get the feel for the place, even if that's not the place I'm going to spend my whole day at least I get a sense of what it is. I think that's important too. Go over the job description. We go getting back to the specificity that's really helpful in a remote situation. The clearer the picture they have and you have that they know what it is they're supposed to do, exactly what the job entails, how long their day should be, how full their day should be. I think that's really, really helpful. And if you have a practice where you have remote work policies, make sure they get them, distribute them, and make sure they see them, and have a conversation about it so everybody's clear on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, boy, and like I began this discussion, you want to talk about people scrambling to get their HR manuals up to date. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but we're all, as sisters in healthcare, we're all locking arms together to get this done. And we're doing it in a compassionate way, because all of us have been impacted by working remotely. When I'm working with my team with a virtual practice, I also like to point out that you have to give remote employees an opportunity to shine too. Like, don't take the easy way out and give all of your tasks and projects to the in-house staff. Give some of those remote staff opportunities for advancement and maybe professional growth, as long as you have some self-care strategies in place too, because you're not always going to be able to see or get a sense of burnout if you're constantly giving projects to the remote staff worker and not seeing how are they reacting to that caseload emotionally, physically, mentally. But give remote employees an opportunity to shine. Involve them. Even though they're not in-house, involve them and give them visibility within your organization, and trust your staff, both in-house and virtual, because if leaders give workers the ability to work from home, then they have to trust those employees that the work will get done. And if it's not getting done, again, maybe that's an opportunity for some professional growth and some self-care strategies. It's all going to be part of your vision overall with this. So I think that as we're helping more and more practice transition to a hybrid or virtual practice model, we're going to see scaling of practices, from one person solopreneur practices to 3 people, 5, 15, and even, 15, maybe even 20 working remotely in order to make this virtual practice scale out and work. But your remote team still needs to be empowered. They still need opportunities for advancement and professional growth. And that's what I absolutely love and I'm passionate about, is scaling that team out so that you start having leverage. And as a practitioner, if you're not used to leveraging the help, the assistance of a remote team, boy, is it going to feel wonderful when you start seeing all of these mechanisms start gaining momentum, and then you're finally able to take some time off and relax.
And they bring very valuable perspectives to the group too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the L word, legal. What are some other legal considerations when transitioning to a remote workforce? We got to address this.
Well, and Michelle mentioned this. Some of the states, most state laws, there's no federal law that requires you to reimburse for expenses, but there are state laws. Michelle pointed out California is one of them that that state does have reimbursement policies that you have to pay attention to. The rest of the states don't. unless the expenses take their hourly wage down below minimum wage, and then you have an issue that you need to deal with.
Interesting. Interesting.
Typically, an employer would pay for things like internet or laptop or printers, anything that is necessary to get the work of the day done. They will generally reimburse in some way.
Yep. One of the other things to think about is making sure that for hourly employees, especially if you have non-exempt team members, to make sure that they are properly tracking all of their time worked. It can be, you may think it's all fun and that they're okay with their wages and the time that they're putting in, but if they're not properly recording their time, or they start to do a little work here and there after hours or after dinner, and it's not properly logged, a few months from now, they may come back and say that you didn't pay me for all of my time worked. So it's just really critical that you have those written policies in place as to how they're supposed to record their time. It's even more helpful if you go back to that technology aspect and you have a way to electronically have them log all of their time. But at a bare minimum, you need to make sure that they understand that they're supposed to be logging all of their time work, have it in a written policy as to how they're supposed to record that time, so that there's no question that you're committing to paying them for all of their time worked, and that it's their responsibility to properly log it so that you can pay them properly as well.
And that's really, really important what Michelle just said. I've read more and more litigation that is coming about because of a situation where things got a little lax and it was just fine to work a little bit here, a little bit there, and then something goes south. And as soon as it goes south and they turn, and it comes back to, well, you didn't pay me for all my time, and it gets ugly.
Right. And I have also coached practices where the remote staff said, you didn't pay me for all my time, nor did you pay me for my inkjet cartridges. And furthermore, here is another list of supplies that I've been using from home in order to work as a remote healthcare team member. So what you're explaining, I'm seeing even in our coaching practice. I'm sorry, Michelle, I did not mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. And if you, the courts and the powers that be will generally take that employee's word over the employer if you don't have the proper documentation. So that's why it just goes back to the documentation is key. That there's a policy in writing, they knew what it was, and that you're committing to paying them. So it's all about the documentation.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. My goodness. Well,
I-9s are another issue. Until yesterday, actually, there was a relaxation on the I-9, the in-person verification of the IDs that you have to show. That sunset yesterday. So we're back to now within 3 days, that new person needs to come in on site and show you, and so you can have an in-person verification of their documentation for I-9 purposes.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that, Denise. I really do. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
those are the key things that human resources is so broad and so expansive that there's a lot of case by case and, things that are going to come up, but those are really the key things that need to be considered as you're looking to have a remote workforce. Yes,
to stay, to take all of the state and federal guidelines into consideration. It's so important. And it helps relieve your stress. Well, yes. Michelle and Denise, I want to thank you so much for sharing this wonderful information. This is day 3 of our masterclass, and we started with self-care techniques for ourselves, for our staff, transitioned into day 2, where we talked about, in order to re-engineer and reinvent our practice, we're going to need to have some clear guidelines on what the vision needs to be. And also how that vision is. In day 2, we talked about how does that vision balance not only our patient's trauma, but our own. because of what we have all gone through from trying to pivot into a telehealth or a virtual practice model. And here we are in day 3 with some great information, which is how do we keep our teams engaged and feeling empowered and keep us within legal guidelines for our virtual practice and our virtual team. So before we go, I just want to announce that I'm offering a 60-minute complimentary strategy session for serious practitioners who want to move forward just a little bit quicker when it comes to getting more patients, more clients online, and building their virtual practice. Basically, what happens is my secretary schedules us time to meet over Zoom. And I get an opportunity to get to know you. I get to listen to your journey and review your practice goals. And then I offer some solutions with my team. So you come to the call prepared with a goal in mind, and my team and I will also prepare a strategy for you. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, I can really help you in depth. And now I'm also going to post a question in our Thriving Practice Sisterhood Facebook group so that I can get some feedback from our participants. And everyone who's listening, you'll see a masterclass journal prompt asking you to write about a personality trait you admire in other team members. So again, I'm going to be asking you about a personality trait you admire in other team members, and just look for hashtag day number 3, or it just says hashtag day 3. So let me ask you, Michelle, what's one personality trait you admire in others when it comes to leadership?
Oh gosh, there's so many, but probably the biggest one I have is authenticity.
Yeah.
And that you really feel, that you can trust and believe in what they're saying and that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Denise, how about you? What's one personality trait you admire in others?
It's along the same lines. Integrity, I think, means the most to me in just about any situation.
Mm-hmm.
And someone that you can really, who you really know that they care about you. It's important that the work of the day get done, but they care about you and your personal development. And you can tell that Michelle said it, authenticity. You know they're being very real with you.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
For me, it's being an active listener, because in healthcare, we hear thousands, if not infinite, stories of people's health journey. So being an active learner, and I would say that's one of the reasons we all got involved in healthcare and medicine, is to actively engage with the journey that our patients or our clients are on. So becoming an active listener, really listening to the health and wellness stories that our clients have to share. That's a personality trait that that inspires me. And I tell you what, I go through professional growth classes on a yearly basis just to become a better active listener, not just for my team, but for some of my global clients as well. So, after reading what our other sisters share, I think that we might get inspired to take some action towards our own leadership after listening even to this webcast. So I look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Michelle and Denise, I'm going to post your website into our journal prompts so that people know how to get in touch with you to take some other HR discussions to the next level. But I want to tell everyone, take care, sisters. I love you. And remember that we're all in this together. So I just want to say, take care, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you, Michelle and Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having us. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.